Hi, Sean here, one half of Sean and Kiara. We are the co-creators of Lucy in the Sky, a graphic novel for middle grade readers published by First Second. Our second graphic novel, Rhiannon, will be out in October of 2025. If you like the things we do, please consider supporting us by becoming a paying member of our Patreon site for $4 a month. And if you enjoy videos like this, hit the like and subscribe buttons, as it'll help us build this channel. Thank you, and enjoy the video. Hi, this is Sean. I'm looking here at a mock-up that I'm doing on InDesign of a new issue of Wunderkammer that I'm planning on self-publishing. Wunderkammer is a comic series of which I did 4, starting back in 2009, and the last one I did came out in 2011, I guess. So during those 2 years, I managed to produce 4 issues of this. It was basically an anthology, which I was serializing 3 different stories. There were 2 comic stories, and then 1 text and illustration story, I guess you could say. Anyway, this is so I began work on the 5th issue and then never finished it, and then as you can see here, the cover date is summer 2023. So a couple years ago, I had the idea that I would actually finish it, and it had been 12 years since the last one of these came out, and so this was to be my post 12-year hiatus issue, and now I'm going to have to update that to post 14-year hiatus issue, assuming that it'll be out by the end of this year, 2025. At any rate, I began doing this comic for a couple reasons. So, I wanted to just do my own comic, basically, and there were a couple stories that I had begun working on, and I thought this would be a good reason for me to continue working on them, and I'd be forced to continue the stories, serializing them, kind of Dickens style. So, Charles Dickens would serialize his novels that way, and although I had kind of an idea where the stories were going to go, it's not as though I had the whole thing scripted out. I was making it up as I went along, a lot of it. And I also wanted to try to get a Xeric grant. Well, I applied 4 times and was rejected 4 times, and then the Xeric grant ended. And that was around I think around the time that I put out the 4th, after I put the 4th issue out, and so, but I decided to keep going. But then a couple things happened. Well, actually, they happened a few years after that. My wife and I began work on a story idea, and that kind of took up a lot of the time that would normally have been spent on this. And that story idea grew into what became our first graphic novel, Lucy in the Sky. And then 3 things happened. In 2015, we finally got a book deal for it through First Second. And that same year, I began a job as a middle school teacher. And also that summer, the first of our 3 children was born. And so that took up a lot of my time, working on Lucy, teaching, which is an all-consuming job, much more than a 40-hour-a-week job. If anybody who's been a teacher or is a teacher, they know that. And then having children, and since then we've had 2 more. So not a whole lot of time had been spent in finishing up this Wunderkammer. Well, Lucy's been out we've just finished our second graphic novel for First Second Rhiannon, and that'll be out in October of this year. And and so I have time. Well, not a whole lot. I'm still teaching, and I still have 3 young children, but I have the time that I was spending on Rhiannon, so I've decided to get back into doing this again. So anyway, so I had the 2 comic stories. I had episodes of them ready to go for number 5, and so they're in here. And then since I've finished Rhiannon, I began work on a 3rd story called The Yellow Man. And so the idea now is to revive this and start serializing those stories again, and we'll see how it goes. I'm not sure if I'm thinking now it might even be not a floppy comic, but I might have enough material to do a trade paperback as a periodical. So we'll see. I've got to update this cover, of course. So this cover shows Ockbrand Comics was the name of my independent comics publishing venture. And the cover here features the cast of one of the series called Starling Hall. The characters are all birds, or anthropomorphized birds. And these are some of the main characters here. And then some secondary characters that we see in kind of flashback sequences. Ancestors of some of these characters are on the paintings on the walls. So, and they're here in the actual place called Starling Hall. So the blank page there is going to be sort of a letter from the creator page. And then we have the first 10 pages of The Yellow Man, which I've been putting high-res versions of these pages up on our Patreon site. And so to get access of those, please consider becoming a $4 a month member. And I'll put the link below for that if you're interested. I encourage you. And there's the title page of The Yellow Man. It's funny because this illustration here, these buildings, I drew this way long ago when I was first developing the art for Lucy in the Sky. Our first version of it was less a graphic novel, it was more of a picture book for younger kids. And the story took place in a high-rise in New York. And I never used it, and so I always liked the drawing, and so I repurposed it for the story, The Yellow Man, which takes place in a city. Here we have the opening sequence. Lorelei, so I'm introducing each of the characters with their own little self-titled sequence, and comic strip fans might recognize the lettering here. Is the style is from the Little Orphan Annie, the Annie strips. And I guess Lorelei is kind of an Annie-like character. She's a writer of comics, and we're seeing here a sequence from a story that she's writing. We see her looking at an obituary in the newspaper, which leads us into one of the subplots. Here's some of the other characters we're introduced to. Her colleague at the studio, they work, Chick Talbot. Some other people at the bar they frequent, the Tally Ho. This painting here, and this is also from an older version of the sequence. I basically copied this panel into this new version and made some changes, but one of the things I kept was this painting back here on the bar of the wall of the bar, which I wanted to keep. It's a Picasso painting of an absinthe drinker. And now we have a little bit of a glimpse into Lorelei's mind. She's imagining her fantasy life as a superhero. She stops in a comic book store called The Gutter, and we're introduced to another character, Sophie Fomalhaut, who is also a musician. She has a band called Ken Not Included. And Lorelei goes home, gets ready for bed, and continues to write. And next we have a sequence introducing this character, Stella Fairchild, who is sort of a mysterious character. As we get further into the story, we begin wondering whether she actually exists or not, or if she's some sort of delusional figment of Chick Talbot's imagination. Is Chick here? And so it's the 10th page. The beer they're drinking is a beer label I designed years ago called Eternal Recurrence. So there's 2 more pages that'll finish out the sequence, and then we go into Starling Hall. So this I drew back 2011, 2012, whenever it was that before I dropped Wunderkammer the first time around. 2013 is the date there that I did this. So it took me a couple years to get these strips done. You see the outside of Starling Hall, and we are introduced to some of the servants. So we have sort of an upstairs downstairs kind of thing going on here. And in fact, I took the characters from the 1970s series Upstairs Downstairs. They're actually named after them, and they're modeled after those characters. So this is Mrs. Bridges, who was the cook, and the butler we'll see here, Mr. Hudson, is the butler. Daisy is the maid. The footman, I think his name was Edward or Edmund. Trying to find where it says his name. Anyway. So this whole sequence is the downstairs crew, except for the last page. Then we come up and we see a few panels of these 2 characters, Jocasta Winturn and Christian O'Hare. Christian O'Hare is suffering from some sort of mental breakdown. I think since I only drew 4 pages of this chapter, that I might do another 4 pages and continue it in the same issue. Maybe we'll have another comic come in between the 2 parts of it. And then we have this was the other serial that I did originally. It's called The Flying Duchess. It was a science fiction story about this pilot, Jane Vanterpool. And coming back here, so there's some characters here. This guy, Auguste Barre, I think he is. He's based on Ian Fleming, the creator of the James Bond novels. And this character here, Esperanza Naj Torres, is based on Dorothy Parker. Let's actually get quite a bit of this done. This character here was my first attempt to do an Annie kind of character. And in fact, she's called Annie, I believe. Yeah, she's called Annie. So, and she has there's a Daddy Warbucks figure here as well. She looks a lot more like Annie than Lorelei does. And then this next page continues the story of some of these characters, although they are done as actual comic strips. So we have a kind of a pastiche of a little Orphan Annie strip. And then this is my pastiche of a Doonesbury strip using some of the other characters in this chapter. The next page is sort of an excerpt from a newspaper article. And then here we have the ending of the strip. Or of this this chapter of it. And that's what I have so far. I still have some pages I need to lay in here. So, all right. Next time, I'll have some more to show. Thank you for watching.